know enough about climate change. It is time for decisions now. Coping with climate change. What does that mean? Climate has always determined how we live, and when it changed in the past, we adapted. So, what's new about adapting to climate change today? Shouldn't we focus on other challenges, such as education, unemployment, and economic development? Sure enough, the climate has always been changing. But the recent change, caused by our emission of gases such as carbon dioxide and methane that increase the greenhouse effect of the atmosphere, has happened in a much shorter time frame. As a result, the Earth is warming. This change in our climate is already leading to significant impacts. Glaciers are melting faster than expected. Sea level is on the rise. And it's very likely that droughts and extreme weather events like cyclones will become more frequent. These impacts destroy people's livelihoods and homes. They damage our infrastructure and disrupt communication and trade. Moreover, climate change is endangering development successes, and the poor and marginalized are often affected the most. Okay, climate change is evidently taking place. Whether it accelerates further depends on our lifestyle and economic activities. So, is it all about reducing carbon emissions? Well, even if we were to stop emissions instantly, the world would not stop warming immediately due to the amount of gases we've already emitted. That's why we must do both: reduce greenhouse gas emissions and adapt to inevitable climate change. But how exactly can we adapt, considering that the precise extent and form of climate change aren't known? Climate projections will never be able to predict the future with absolute certainty, partly because the way in which the climate will change depends on our decisions in coming years. But do we really need certainty to make decisions? No. We routinely make decisions based on experience, facts, or insights available to us without knowing exactly what the future will bring. And while we don't know everything about future climate change, we know enough to act. But what exactly do we need to do differently? Basically, we need to bear in mind both current and future impacts of climate change. Climate projections do not translate into concrete strategies, but they can serve as guardrails for planning. We should consider how development plans, policies, and projects might be affected by climate change, and to what extent these in turn make climate change worse. One possible consequence of climate change is precipitation pattern changes. These may lead to both droughts and extreme rain, sometimes in the same place. We should ask ourselves how a land use plan must be changed in order to remain flexible in reacting to future challenges. What adaptation measures can help to minimize effects on the local economy and people's livelihoods? Coastal megacities worldwide are threatened by the adverse consequences of sea level rise and extreme weather events. But what does an urban planner need to consider in order to make these cities climate resilient? What are the most suitable adaptation options? Clear criteria like urgency, costs, and political and social acceptance can help to prioritize adaptation options, such as flood preparedness measures, improvement of drainage systems, wetland restoration, and coastal management. Adaptation is a learning process. We all need to continuously improve our adaptation strategies, and making climate change adaptation a topic at all levels is important. There are many resources available that can support these activities, such as online information platforms like CI GRASP. We need to reduce greenhouse gas emissions and adapt to the impacts of climate change. And we must start acting today, together. Involve decision makers. Increase understanding about climate change. create awareness about the need for society to adapt. These are important first steps. Preparing for possible things to come is much better than bearing the impacts of climate change without any protection. We know enough. Now let's adapt.
Humans have released an extra 2.3 trillion tons of carbon dioxide to the Earth's atmosphere over the past 200 years. Scientists warn that this human activity, if left unchecked, will lead to dangerous global warming. The climate is warming faster than ever recorded. The 17 warmest years have all occurred in the last 20. Increases of up to 6 degrees are likely over the next century, unless we do much more to tackle climate change. The consequences would be devastating. Rising sea levels, due to melting ice mass, threaten hundreds of millions of people. Continued warming also threatens hundreds of millions of others in drought-affected areas. We need to limit the increase in global temperatures to well below 2 degrees to have a chance of avoiding dangerous climate change. The use of fossil fuels such as coal, oil and natural gas in energy and transport has been a major driver of rising greenhouse gas emissions. This must be seriously cut back. Preventing tropical deforestation is also crucial for reducing emissions. A global problem calls for a global solution, a UN agreement to tackle climate change. This solution must be fair. Industrialized countries must make deep cuts in their emissions. The Greens want the EU to reduce its emissions 40% by 2020, based on 1990 levels, in line with scientific advice. Europe must also support developing countries, so their economies and societies can progress sustainably, without adding to the damage we have already caused. We cannot afford not to stop climate change. The consequences of climate change would be 20 times more expensive than the cost of tackling it. We also have a duty to leave our planet in good health for future generations.
%80 of the energy we use, whether for electricity, transport or heating, comes from fossil fuels like coal, gas and oil. Burning fossil fuels causes serious pollution and leads to the emission of ever more greenhouse gases like carbon dioxide, driving climate change. Energy production and transport alone account for over half the EU's greenhouse gas emissions, over 2,580 million tonnes in 2006. Fossil fuels aren't just dirty, there's only a limited amount of them available, and as ever more people want to use fossil fuels, the price and volatility of them, particularly oil and gas, will cause more damage to our economies. Nuclear power is not the solution. The nuclear industry is in decline, and any expansion would not only be hugely expensive, it would also take far too long to make any real contribution to the reductions in greenhouse gases we so urgently need. Nuclear remains dirty and dangerous, with the problems of harmful radioactive waste and weapons proliferation ever present. Thankfully, most of the solutions to our energy and climate challenges already exist. The quickest and most cost-effective step is to stop wasting energy. The Greens want the EU to adopt a binding target to reduce energy consumption by at least 20% by 2020. This would help save billions of euros every year. And this means making our homes, both existing and new, more efficient, for example by renovating houses to reduce wasted heat energy. It means that household appliances, cars and other energy-using products should be designed to use energy in the most efficient way. And all of this will help reduce our fuel and energy bills. We also need to make our businesses more energy efficient. Improving production processes both in industry and the power sector will cut costs for businesses, which should ultimately reduce prices for consumers too. And apart from using energy better, we also have our own homegrown, ready-made sources of clean and safe energy, renewable energy. We already produce electricity from wind, solar, biomass and hydropowered sources, while biomass and biogas, solar and geothermal energy sources also help meet our heating needs. Only around 9% of our energy currently comes from renewables, but the EU has committed to increase this to 20% by 2020. This will cut fossil fuel consumption by up to 300 million tonnes a year and reduce CO2 emissions by up to 900 million tonnes a year. That's the equivalent of taking 450 million cars off the roads. The Greens want the EU to go further and move towards an economy that is based entirely on renewable energy. For this, we need to develop our energy infrastructure so that we can make the best use of renewables. Creating a super smart electricity grid to connect up Europe will help us take advantage of the enormous potential of offshore wind power hubs like in the North Sea or solar power hubs in the Mediterranean and North Africa. But we also need to promote decentralised renewable energy production like solar power closer to the consumer. All of this will not only reduce our dependence on volatile fuel imports and help make us more self-sufficient, it will also reduce our climate-damaging pollution and create millions of jobs in Europe.